The latest quote for spot precious metals has already reached $4,700, while precious metals started getting hit by a heavy sell-off from around the $4,800 level. So were the three judgments we made earlier consistent with market trends? Is the short-term overheated market scenario we talked about yesterday matching today's market performance? I even hand drew the K-line chart for all of you. So did you actually seize this opportunity? Did you adjust your position down in time? Did you catch this $200 price fluctuation? The facts once again show that our judgment has high reference value for actual market performance. Whether it is medium to long-term positioning or intraday short-term trading, whether we are dealing with a range-bound market or a one-way trend, our trend analysis has maintained relatively high reliability. In our view, this round of precious metals movement can be divided into three stages. The first stage is the overheated upward market. The second stage is the sell-off adjustment, and only the third stage is the reasonable entry window. And as of now, it is fair to say clearly that precious metals have officially entered the second stage, which is the phase of downward liquidation and risk release. What's most concerned about right now mainly comes down to two questions. How far will this wave of selling go, and when will the reasonable entry point appear? Don't rush. In this video, we are not going to jump straight into giving price levels. Instead, we are first going to break down the recent public speech by relevant US personnel. What we need to do is not just look at what was said, but also judge the signal that this official statement was really trying to send. Because only by seeing that layer of logic clearly can we build a stronger basis for judging the second stage adjustment of precious metals, and in turn improve the reference value of our next round of trend analysis. If you already watched our video yesterday and successfully avoided today's sharp drop, then feel free to subscribe to my channel and leave a like as well. Your support is the most direct motivation for us to keep putting out new content. Alright, now let's get into it. The recent public speech by relevant US personnel was originally scheduled to begin at 9 o'clock, but the speaker actually appeared 2 minutes later than planned, and judging from the overall condition when coming on, the speaker looked obviously somewhat tired, not very energetic, and generally gave off the impression of being not in a strong state. Fortunately, in the end, the speech was still delivered in a relatively complete manner. But there was another detail in this speech that deserves very close attention. That is, the speaker spent almost the entire time sticking strictly to the prepared script. There was not much impromptu expression that deviates from the manuscript. Precisely because of that, we have reason to judge that what this speech presented was probably not simply a personal expression, but rather a unified external statement from the relevant U.S. Administrative Department. At the beginning of the speech, the speaker first mentioned and congratulated the U.S. Space Agency on the successful launch of the Artemis II crewed rocket. On the surface, this may have looked like an ordinary opening pleasantry, but in reality, it very likely had already set the overall tone for the entire speech. Immediately afterward, the speaker went on to review the recent U.S. military operations against Iran and claimed that the operation had achieved phased results. By citing relevant progress in Venezuela as a reference, the relevant U.S. official essentially stated that the U.S. does not rely on Middle Eastern oil, and the regional military operations related to Iran are carried out to support U.S. allies in the Middle East. In this part of the speech, the speaker not only mentioned operational progress, but also expressed that the U.S. military may adjust its deployment at any time. If the U.S. does not receive more cooperation support, it may adjust its presence in the relevant region. Immediately afterward, the speaker went on to stress the legitimacy of the U.S. military operations in the relevant region, especially claiming that the so-called Iranian nuclear threat to the U.S., Europe and U.S. Middle Eastern allies has been effectively controlled. But it should be noted that the wording used was that these core objectives were close to being achieved, not fully completed. At the same time, the recent rise in U.S. oil prices was attributed to attacks on commercial oil tankers in the relevant waters. The speaker also mentioned that after the current U.S. administration took over from the previous one, the U.S. economic performance has improved significantly. Then came the core part related to energy. On crude oil and natural gas, the speaker continued to emphasize that the U.S. hardly imports any oil through the Strait of Hormuz, and will not accept oil transported through this strait in the future. It also claimed that the U.S. military operations have achieved major progress. The speaker specifically pointed out that countries that rely on oil imports through the Strait of Hormuz should take primary responsibility for maintaining the safety of the channel. The U.S. will provide assistance, but relevant regional countries should take the lead in protecting the oil transportation route. At the same time, two suggestions were put forward. First, purchase oil from the U.S. Second, participate in the maintenance of the safety of the Strait of Hormuz. We believe this reveals part of the next stage policy orientation of the U.S. in the Middle East. The U.S. may use energy resources as an important tool to strengthen the status of the U.S. dollar in international settlement and bring relevant energy trade into the management framework under U.S. supervision, which may become a typical model for the U.S. to participate in global resource governance in the future. In addition, it can be seen from the speech that the U.S. has no intention of launching large-scale military operations and is more inclined to provide support through low-intensity military operations, while transferring relevant ground operation tasks to regional allies and partners. There was also a line in the remarks: they will need to sell oil, as it is their main source of income income for post-conflict reconstruction. So we believe that the key area of concern for the U.S. military in the relevant region is Karg Island. Judging from the disclosed policy intention, the U.S. strategic objective is to control the relevant energy transportation nodes, rather than destroying local energy facilities. Essentially, this is to build a new regional energy trade cooperation framework led by the U.S. And now we come to the final part related to follow-up policy signals. The relevant U.S. official stated that the military operations in the relevant region are expected to achieve phased goals in a short period of time, and intensive strikes will be carried out against relevant targets in the next 2 to 3 weeks. If no relevant agreement is reached, energy infrastructure such as local power plants may become the next strike targets. It also mentioned that the relevant oil operation facilities have not been included in the strike scope for the time being, to maintain the possibility of subsequent energy trade recovery. From the above statement, we can see 3 signals. First, the current military operations have not yet reached the expected goals. Second, the next round of strike focus may be on civilian infrastructure such as power plants. Third, the U.S. intends to maintain the usability of local energy facilities to support subsequent regional energy trade arrangements. There is also a statement in the speech. This is a long-term investment for the future of the next generation. This statement is mainly oriented to the relevant military personnel and domestic interest groups related to military operations. The closing part of the speech mentioned conventional blessings for the U.S. military and the country, which means that follow-up military deployment may be further adjusted. Now that we have sorted out the core signals of this speech, let's turn to the market trend that everyone is most concerned about. The current price of spot precious metals is around $4,600. Our view is that investors can wait and see for a few more days, at least until next week, and do not need to rush to adjust their positions. We can first observe the amplitude of short-term market fluctuations to judge the possible support level of the subsequent trend. For investors with heavy positions, it is recommended to adjust positions reasonably according to their own risk tolerance. There will be plenty of market opportunities in the future, and controlling investment risks is the top priority. For the short-term trend, if there is a short-term positive signal in the market, it may trigger a rebound to around $4,680, which may put short positions under certain pressure. If the adjustment trend continues, the price may find support near $4,500. No matter what position you hold, there is no need to be overly anxious. For the follow-up reasonable position arrangement window, we will continue to update the trend analysis for your reference. All the above analysis is for reference only and does not constitute any investment advice. Please make decisions based on your own risk tolerance. See you in the next video.